The Arizona desert blazed beneath a merciless sun. Dust drifted across the canyon floor and vultures circled above the jagged cliffs. Jesse Cole, a weathered cowboy with a scar under his eye, rode slow through the wasteland. He'd been trailing cattle thieves for 2 days with no luck. His canteen was nearly empty and the heat made his horse stumble. As he crossed a dried riverbed, he heard something faint, a child's voice. He froze, listening. Again it came, weak but desperate, carried on the wind. "Mister, please. Help my mommy." Jesse spurred his horse toward the sound, heart pounding. Up ahead, beside a massive boulder, he saw a little girl, no more than 6, barefoot, her face streaked with tears and dust. She pointed toward the canyon wall. Jesse's eyes followed and his stomach twisted. A woman was tied to a rock, wrists bound behind her, her dark hair matted with sweat. The sun blazed directly above her, skin cracked from the heat. Jesse jumped from his horse and ran forward. "Ma'am," he shouted, cutting the ropes with his knife. The woman collapsed into his arms, barely conscious. Her lips were dry, her breathing shallow. "Water," she croaked. Jesse poured the last drops from his canteen into her mouth, careful not to spill. The girl clung to her mother's arm, sobbing. Jesse looked around. Tracks in the dust, boot prints and drag marks. Someone had left them here on purpose. "Who did this?" he asked softly. The woman blinked weakly, whispering, "Men. White men. Took my husband. Said we steal horses," her voice broke. Jesse clenched his jaw. He knew how cruel the frontier could be. Justice here was often nothing but vengeance in disguise. He carried the woman, Apache by her features, toward his horse, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. The girl followed closely. "We'll get you out of here," Jesse said. He lifted the woman onto his horse and walked beside it, leading them toward his ranch several miles west. The sun beat down, turning the air into waves of heat. He gave the child his hat to shade her face. Every step echoed with the sound of rattlesnakes and the whisper of dry wind through the mesquite. By sundown, the ranch appeared like a ghost on the horizon. Inside the cabin, Jesse laid the woman on his bed and set water to boil. The girl sat quietly, clutching her mother's hand. The woman's name, he learned, was Noka. Her daughter's name was Alita. He fed them beans and cornbread, though Noka could barely swallow. As the oil lamp flickered, Jesse studied their faces. The woman had strength even in her weakness, and the girl's eyes carried the same defiance. "You're safe here," he said softly. "Ain't no one gonna hurt you again." Noka nodded faintly before drifting into exhausted sleep. That night, Jesse sat outside on the porch, staring at the moonlit desert. He'd seen plenty of cruelty in his life. Indians hanged for crimes they didn't commit. Settlers burned out of their homes. Soldiers shooting first and asking later. He'd ridden with both sides once, and both had left scars on his soul. Now seeing that woman tied and left to die made something inside him boil. He swore quietly into the wind. "If those men come back, I'll send them to hell myself." The coyotes howled their agreement from the hills. By morning, Noka could sit up, though her body still trembled. Jesse tended to her wounds with cool cloths. Alita helped feed her, her small hands careful. "They took my husband," Noka said weakly. He tried to stop them. "They said they'd teach us a lesson for stealing cattle, but we never stole." Her voice shook with anger. Jesse's eyes hardened. He'd heard of ranchers using examples to scare tribes off their land. He thought of the men he'd been tracking, thieves, yes, but they called themselves ranch hands. He realized they might be the same men. That afternoon, he saddled his horse. "I'll find them," he said. Noka shook her head. "They kill," she whispered. "You help us." "That is enough," Jesse smiled grimly. "Ma'am, if I let them get away, they'll do it again. Maybe next time someone won't come along." He left his rifle by the door for her protection, took a spare pistol, and rode east. Alita waved from the porch, tears in her eyes. Jesse raised his hand, promising silently to return. The desert stretched out before him, endless and unforgiving. He found their camp near a dry creek bed by dusk. 3 men around a fire, drinking whiskey, laughing. He recognized one from a wanted poster in Tombstone. Thieves, all right. He crept closer, revolver in hand. "Evening, boys," he called, stepping into the firelight. They froze. One reached for his gun, too slow. Jesse shot him in the shoulder. The other stood, swearing. "You left a woman tied to a rock," Jesse said coldly. "Care to tell me why?" The tallest one sneered. "Half-breed thief," he spat. "We were teaching her kind a lesson." Jesse's jaw tightened. "You done taught the wrong one." The next shot rang out, hitting the man square in the chest. The last tried to run, but Jesse caught him, knocking him into the dirt. "You tell your kind," he growled, pressing his gun to the man's neck. "The next time you touch an Apache or a woman, I'll hang you myself." The man nodded, trembling. Jesse let him go, watching him stumble into the darkness. When the fire died, Jesse buried the dead and rode back under a sky full of hard, cold stars. When he reached the ranch, dawn was breaking. Noka sat by the fire, her face pale but alive. Alita ran to him, smiling for the first time. "You came back," she said softly. Jesse knelt, patting her hair. "Told you I would." Noka looked at him, eyes glistening. "You risked your life," she whispered. He shrugged. "Ain't bravery. Just what's right." She took his hand and pressed it to her heart. "My people remember kindness," she said. "You have friend among Apache now." For the first time in years, Jesse felt the warmth of belonging. Over the next days, Noka regained her strength. She helped tend the garden and milk the cow, while Alita played with the ranch dogs. Jesse taught the girl to ride, her laughter echoing across the dry fields. Sometimes he caught himself smiling just watching them, but he knew they couldn't stay forever. Soldiers were patrolling nearby, and suspicion ran deep on both sides. One morning, Noka told him quietly, "We must go. My husband, if he lives, will search for us." Jesse nodded slowly, hiding the ache that gripped his chest. He packed supplies for them: dried meat, cornmeal, a water flask, and a blanket. When they were ready to leave, Noka turned to him. "You saved more than our lives," she said softly. "You saved my child's hope." Jesse smiled faintly. "Maybe she saved mine too." Alita hugged him tightly before climbing onto her mother's horse. As they rode away, the wind carried Noka's final words back to him. "You good man, Jesse Cole." He stood there long after they vanished, hat in hand, watching until only dust hung in the rising sun. Weeks passed. Jesse went back to his quiet life, mending fences, tending cattle, talking to no one. Yet the ranch no longer felt empty. Sometimes he'd find a small stone figure by the well or a feather tied to his gatepost. Gifts left by unseen hands. Each one reminded him that kindness had a way of returning, even across the vast silence of the desert. And every evening when the sun dipped low, he'd look toward the canyon and whisper, "Hope you found him, Noka." "Somewhere," he liked to think, she whispered back. Years later, as gray crept into his hair, Jesse still rode the same trails. The land hadn't changed much. The same dust, the same sky, but he had. The memory of that woman and her child stayed with him like a scar that didn't hurt anymore. One spring morning, he found a hawk feather on his porch, tied with a strip of red cloth. He smiled, knowing who had left it. "You're welcome, little one," he said quietly. Then he saddled his horse and rode into the sunrise, leaving 2 sets of tracks in the sand, his and the past's.